You assume you're afraid of discomfort, conflict, or embarrassment. That's the story you tell yourself. But if you look closer, you'll notice something more unsettling. You're not afraid of the world. You're afraid of how the world might reveal you to yourself. You carefully avoid situations where your intentions might become visible. You avoid conversations where sincerity could slip through your tone. You avoid opportunities where failure will expose your desire. You avoid eye contact when someone gets too perceptive. You avoid questions that feel too direct. You don't label this as avoidance. You label it as being realistic, cautious, strategic, mature. But these are just sophisticated names of the same psychological tactic. Remain unseen, remain unmeasured, remain unexposed. The mind prefers to stay untested because tests make your self-image negotiable. They introduce uncertainty. They invite the possibility that other people might see something different than what you see. And if your self-image is negotiable, then so is your worth. That is the part you cannot tolerate. You don't avoid people because you dislike connection. You avoid them because connection forces you to exist in someone else's reality, not just in your own. In your own reality, you control the narrative. You decide how you are seen. You decide what parts are visible and what parts remain hidden. But in someone else's reality, you can be misunderstood, misread, mislabeled, rejected, or dismissed. The danger isn't the other person. The danger is that the story you tell yourself about who you are might not survive the encounter. And so avoidance becomes a quiet form of self-protection, not the dramatic kind, but the subtle, silent kind. No one sees it, so no one questions it. You think it keeps you safe. In reality, it keeps you unverified. And unverified selves don't become confident. They become fragile. They remain theories about themselves rather than proofs. The strange thing is that the people you fear are rarely the actual source of your fear. The source is the simulation your mind creates about them long before anything real happens. You don't wait for evidence. You predict outcomes. You imagine scenarios. You build entire narratives from fragments of expression and tiny social cues. And the brain reacts to those predictions as if they were facts. This model building isn't random. It's built from old wounds, old confusions, old humiliations, and old patterns you never questioned. The brain doesn't store these moments as memories. It stores them as templates. Templates to predict the future. Templates to protect you from repeating the past. But templates are not truth. They are just stories that felt useful at some point. You don't avoid someone because they actually rejected you. You avoid them because your mind simulates rejection first. You don't avoid ambition because you don't care. You avoid it because ambition makes failure meaningful. You don't avoid honesty because lies are easier. You avoid honesty because honesty allows other people to respond to your real thoughts instead of the mask. The brain is not loyal to reality. It is loyal to safety. Reality requires uncertainty. Safety requires prediction. Prediction feels like control, and control feels like protection. This is why two people can experience the same room completely differently. One sees possibility, connection, openings, and interest. The other sees evaluation, comparison, threat, and exposure. The room didn't change. The people in the room didn't change. Only the mental simulation changed. And when simulation becomes more vivid than reality, reality becomes irrelevant. At that point, you're no longer interacting with people. You're interacting with your projections of them. You often tell yourself that you dislike crowds, or that you prefer small groups, or that you're just selective about who you open up to. But if you pay attention, something else becomes obvious. You don't avoid people. You avoid situations where your inner world might become visible. Being seen is not about physical visibility. It's about psychological visibility. It means letting someone witness parts of you that you haven't fully sorted out. It means letting someone read your desire, your longing, your uncertainty, your insecurity, your projections, your self-doubt. It means letting someone see that you care. Most people assume the opposite of avoidance is courage, but that's not true. The real opposite of avoidance is vulnerability, not the dramatic kind, but the subtle kind where you let someone form their own impression of you without managing or editing it. Vulnerability is terrifying because it removes your ability to control how you exist in another mind. You don't fear rejection because someone might say no. You fear rejection because it would confirm a belief you already carry about yourself. You don't fear judgment because someone might criticize you. You fear judgment because a part of you suspects the criticism might be true. And so you retreat, not loudly, but silently. You retreat into politeness, into ambiguity, into small talk, into silence, into rooms where you can be present without being known. From the outside, it looks like introversion or calmness or emotional independence. Internally, it is a careful negotiation of how much of yourself can be revealed without risking exposure. Avoidance is not about distance. It's about containment. If you trace avoidance far enough, you eventually find desire at the center of it. The things you avoid most are rarely the things you don't want. They're the things you want intensely, but can't tolerate wanting out loud. Desire exposes you. It makes you vulnerable to future outcomes. And vulnerability is risk. It is easier to claim you don't care than to want something and not get it. It is easier to pretend you're above connection than to admit you need it. It is easier to stay distant than to risk being misunderstood by someone you wish would understand you. Avoidance is not the absence of desire. It is desire in conflict with fear. The more you want something, the more tempting avoidance becomes because avoidance allows you to preserve the fantasy of possibility without confronting reality. Maybe I could have become safer than I tried and failed. Fantasy hurts less than exposure, and the brain will choose less pain over more pain every time, even if it costs your life in slow motion. The tragedy of avoidance is not that you get rejected. The tragedy is that you never give yourself the chance to find out what was actually possible. The self you protect becomes a self you never become. And the possibilities you avoid become the experiences you never get to have. Avoidance trades the uncertain discomfort of exposure for the certain discomfort of stagnation. It sacrifices growth for safety. It preserves identity in theory at the cost of identity in practice. Nothing bad has to happen for avoidance to win. All that's required is that you never test reality. Avoidance can destroy a life without ever causing a single dramatic moment. It operates quietly, gradually, invisibly, a slow erosion instead of sudden break. The real danger is not pain. The real danger is remaining unverified. Unverified selves don't develop confidence. They develop fragility. Confidence doesn't come from believing in yourself. It comes from confronting reality and surviving the encounter. The people you see as confident are not confident because they carry fewer insecurities. They are confident because they have more data about who they become under pressure. Avoidance prevents that data from ever emerging. At some point, you realize that you're not running from rejection, judgment, failure, or disappointment. You are running from the version of yourself you would have to become if you stopped being afraid. And that version of you is not small or safe or familiar. It is bigger than your current identity can hold. Avoidance protects your current self at the cost of your future self. And the world will never know what you might have done, but more painfully, neither will you.